Hey, Khayav. It's ZachsMind from Dallas, Texas. I'm the guy who can't speak in 3 different languages. I understand the question is, why is the missionary position called the missionary position? And Timothian beat me to the punch by going to straight dope and going into very detailed, what I'm going to try to summarize right here. I don't want to duplicate efforts, but I believe that the common wisdom, at least here in the States, I don't know if it's common wisdom in the rest of the world, but in our little concept of reality, we believe that missionaries hundreds of years ago went to other countries in which Christianity had not yet spread their seed, as it were, and told everybody how to live. Said whatever their culture was, whatever their beliefs were, he's like, your gods are not as good as our God. Our God's better than your God, so you should follow us. Very ethnocentric and egocentric, I know. But there it is. That's what we did. We went over there and told them how to live, and that would have gone with, telling them how to have sex. Now, part of your question was, how would the missionaries have known that people were doing it wrong? In that case, it would have just been presumptive. I would imagine that it could have been sermons that were said, maybe, in which the missionary just, said, this is the proper way of doing it. There's probably a Bible verse somewhere in the Old Testament. I bet it's in Leviticus or Numbers, which is essentially the 10 Commandments that you find in Deuteronomy. Leviticus and Numbers are people writing down what they think God meant by those 10 Commandments. Now, if you read the 10 Commandments, they're really easy to follow. You don't need Leviticus and Numbers to, carrying a bushel or more is considered work on the Sabbath. Get out of here. But I bet there's a verse somewhere in Leviticus and Numbers that tells you the missionary position is done this way. The Christians, and I do reluctantly still include myself in that number. I still consider myself a Christian, but I'm far from religious. Religious fanatics, let's say, they like to tell other people how to live and how to think and what to do, and whether or not you can talk about stuff like this and ask questions like, why is the missionary position called the missionary position? In fact, I would imagine that all of this is bunk. That what really happened is that in more recent years, or at least in the latter half of the 20th century, people, I believe Timothian touched on this, people looked back at history and interpreted from history. Well, if hundreds of years ago missionaries went over and told people how to live, then sex-wise, they would have said the most common, straight-faced, face-to-face, blah, 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 blah. The least offensive way of having sex would have been, how the missionaries told the natives how to behave. So this is probably something that was invented more recently, like maybe the 50s and 60s in the 20th century. The etymology of the phrase is probably a much more recent phenomenon. Now, getting more to what a more important point I wanted to make. Towards the end of your question video, you seemed to be very apologetic about this subject, and you wished to show your compassion and sympathies to those who would take offense at the very mentioning of this question with regards to the missionary position. I just have a suggestion for you. You don't have to follow it. You don't have to do this. It's just a suggestion. Don't apologize for your question, your seeking of knowledge. Don't apologize for discussing sexual issues. You're doing it very maturely. There's absolutely no reason why anybody should take offense. And if they do, it's really easy for them to just unsubscribe to you and go somewhere less offensive. Like, say, Disney.com. Somewhere other than here. I'm really exceedingly of the opinion that those who don't like occasional profanity or adult themes really should just get off the internet and let the rest of us have our fun. So if anybody gets offended by you and your opinion or your questions or your seeking of knowledge, Khayav, them. Thank you. Peace, love, naked rabbits, and maximum respect.